Good morning and welcome to the Oxford Sports Pub and Secret Society for the Morning Constitution. I'm Joel Hoxley, your host, and I hope that you enjoy our, our show today because what I'm going to talk about is a little different. I'm going to talk about in political relationships because a lot of people don't realize that with all the vitriol out there, with all the people spilling all this hate on a social media, the most important thing are those relationships. Now, the anonymity that you get from being online is one thing. You can troll anybody, you can say anything you want, and gin up some very unflattering things. But a lot of times you don't know behind the scenes, there are very strong relationships. Now, two Supreme Court justices that people talk about all the time, Scalia and Ginsburg, were best of friends. Their families were friends. The loss of Scalia uh, to Ginsburg was devastating. But the most the death that bothered her the most was her husband's. But to think that that relationship was close, you have relationships that break and then are bonded back together, like Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. They both died on the same day. You know that we can talk about all the, we like to talk about those little tangibles, but we don't realize there were totally different views, and yet they got together and they made it work. So a lot of times it's about the relationships. You know, Congressman Micah, he's up in Congress. He can't get anything done by himself, but he can take credit for it because he brought Democrats on board to vote for the things that he wanted to get accomplished. So political relationships. Beyond that, the reason I bring it up is, what are we doing today when we push people away? We start to fight with them. People misunderstand. I'm following Robert's rules in a Seminole County Republican executive meeting. And if you know what those rules are, you would understand that the only person that I can speak to when speaking, after being acknowledged, is the chairman. And when the chairman understands what I'm saying, or he can ask me to clarify, but that's between him and myself, even though it affects everybody in the room. So when you get the uproar and people start calling you names, it's up to the chair to stand up and be the person in charge and say, you know, attention, like, get back to order. But but I'm saying, even in our Republican gatherings, we're having so much tension because there's so many people with different views. We have one platform. The platform doesn't change until the president changes, till our leader changes. And when that happens, most people don't even realize what's in there. Smaller government. How can you vote for something that takes away from home rule? We had a great explanation on the when we had David Smith at the "You Can't Make This Shit Up" show. He very well articulated the reason that it's hard to create a law to help the counties or the cities because they're all so different. But when they do, it affects each one differently. And the reason why you sometimes go that direction. Also, if you want, that episode's really good with David Smith because he answers hard questions. He talked about the insurance. He talked about a lot of controversial issues, but that's because David is my representative. But Representative Smith is also a friend. And he's not a friend because he takes your donations. He's a friend because he answers his phone. He's already done his time in the military. So he's got time to do this service and do a really good job. Relationships. When I met Congressman John Micah, it was at a college Republicans event, mind you, at his home. And I was interviewing to get the internship, but not on his staff, but on his campaign. I'm introduced to the congressman, and the congressman, now I'm old enough to know he's trying to entertain everybody. So once he's met me, there's not much we're going to talk about. So he sends me over to this woman that's Hispanic. His name is Nancy Acevedo. So he kind of introduces us, so then we can start talking. And we had a lot of conversation because this was when you had Jeb Bush in a race. You had Marco Rubio. So there was a lot of talking because we also had Donald Trump. Where were we? Where were we at politically? Why were we upset with certain people being in the race? Like, why is Marco Rubio in the race when, Jeb Bush? Well, all that networking created a very good bond. And every time an event would come up that we both wanted to be part of, we would go to them. We would, it's nice to know that, hey, you're related, your relationship with Nancy Acevedo is strong. And if it's strong, then you probably think like her. So you're probably on the same, wavelength. You also work just as hard, right? Nancy works hard on one thing, but I work hard on another. So our partnership was very strong and still is today. But with that comes David. So David Washington and I are working on two different sides. But there's so many events that we have to go to, so many different things that we have to accomplish. And every once in a while you get to step back and take a look at the whole room. And you sit there and you take it in and you want to talk about it. So David would talk about it. Wasn't afraid to have a conversation. So we would talk about different things. And you'd see how many things are similar in both parties. And that networking created Jay in Washington. Jay in Washington now works very hard to give you the best service we possibly can from both sides. We want you to know that we're going to help network. Our network is your network, and we're going to do the best job we can for you. Relationships, personal relationships, business relationships, and political relationships. They all should be strong, and you should concentrate on never burning a bridge. So, this is the Morning Constitution, and I want you to be our friend. I want you to like, subscribe, and I also want you to tune in to You Can't Make This Shit Up and the David Washington Show and Countertop Politics. Listen, get this information. You'll learn so much because We're here to teach you. Thanks.